So I've got this bomb and I'm working with my colleague, a young detective. I said, you know what we should do in this situation? I'm standing here with the bomb because I didn't want to tip it or do anything. I'm just standing still with the bomb. We should probably call the bomb squad, but we've got a covert operation here. So how about we just take the bomb, put it in the car, we'll drive to a quiet place so there's an oval nearby, and we'll do what we're meant to have done. So Luke and I are walking out of the place. It's near a big shopping centre. If we called the bomb squad, they would have closed down half of Sydney, and we were trying to do it covertly. We've walked to the car, and Luke's got the keys to the car, and he's pressed the... you know how bombs always seem to go off when someone presses the key to the car? I'm carrying the bomb, and when Luke pressed to open the car, I've turned my head. I have no idea why that was going to help me. Just one side of my face wouldn't be blown off.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the next episode of Game of Crimes with Murph in the morning. What in the heck is wrong with you people that you come back every week? But let me tell you, I love it. I couldn't do this without you. Saying thank you doesn't seem like enough, but that's about the best I can do today. But have we got a special guest for you? You know, I say that every week. I bring on the biggest studs and studettes in law enforcement and military, and even some former criminals on here. But this show's been going for almost 4 years, and I've been dying to get somebody from Australia on here, an Australia police officer. Javier and I went to Australia 3 times, loved the place. We've done 2 tours over there, just fell in love. Everybody was so nice to us over there. Of course, we didn't run into the criminal element, thank goodness, or at least not that we know of. But today we finally have remedied that situation. It's my pleasure to welcome Gary Jubelin. Gary, welcome to the show. Welcome to Game of Crimes, brother.
Thanks, Steve, and it's an absolute privilege to sit down and have a chat with you. So I'm looking forward to it too.
Well, I hope you feel like that after the interview.
And maybe I jumped in too early. Wind that back. Can we edit this?
No, we're going to leave that part in. But just very quickly, Gary was a police officer in New South Wales for 34 years. He retired in 2019. And when he retired, he was the detective chief inspector. Now, I have no idea what that means, but we're going to find out today. We're going to keep our same format, though, because you know we like to talk about the dumb criminals, not just here in the United States, but now around the world. And before we get into the small town police blotter, we've got the disclaimer that we like to read. This is a story about crime. We talk about bad people. We talk about bad people doing bad things to good people. We know we're going to take our show very seriously in the stories that we're going to hear today, but we never want to miss an opportunity to have a little chuckle at the expense of some of these dumb criminals out there. And so we got a great story from Australia that Gary's going to read. And of course, I'm from Florida, and we have no shortage of dumb criminals in my state. So Gary, I'll turn it over to you, brother.
Okay, well, thanks for having me on the show, Steve. And it's going to be an interesting chat. Former cops talking and having their conversations recorded. We could always get ourselves into trouble. You mentioned you live in Florida, and you've brought, or to my attention, an incident that occurred up on the Gold Coast about dumb criminals. Let me paint a picture of what the Gold Coast is. It wasn't in our jurisdiction in New South Wales, but as you know, law enforcement and the characters that you come across are transparent to different areas. Gold Coast is pretty similar to Florida. And one of the crimes that you're pointing out how stupid our crooks are in Australia related to a little bit of drug dealing. And it was a Gold Coast man that was left red-faced when police turned up, executed a search warrant, and they had an anonymous tip-off, which from my policing experience, and you'd probably agree, is usually a rival drug dealer or a disgruntled ex-girlfriend, came into his place and they found a large quantity of marijuana secured in a safe. He, being the good crook that he was, denied any knowledge of it, even though the safe was in his house, in his cupboard, in his bedroom, still denied it, but I like his tenacity. Where his plan to avoid this heinous allegation against him came unstuck, he's also, and I suppose this is a new age where people like to take selfies and that, decided to, on his phone, had taken a selfie of himself standing in the mirror, standing in front of his drug cache. And when the police found that, they obviously thought, okay, this is a wrap. But the bloke still hung in there, still defended himself and said, no, he has no knowledge of it. And I think it was the police prosecutor that summed it up nicely, that the film and the evidence that we're going to rely upon has been directed and starred in by the defendant. He was subsequently convicted. You're laughing, I'm laughing. We see a lot of in the work that we do in the cops, but little things like that put a smile on your face, and it's nice to see some people come unstuck. I'm sure there's a lot of stories about stupid cops. I'll put my hand up. I've done some stupid stuff, but yeah, sometimes you come unstuck, and that person certainly came unstuck.
Well, it seems like the criminals, regardless of where they are, they think we're as dumb as they are. Now, we might not be the brightest bulbs on the Christmas tree, but I don't know how they got in my safe. Oh, it's my safe. How did it get there?
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
I
Unbelievable.
know. Steve, the ones that used to always surprise me, and when I say this, they're horrendous crimes, so I'm not laughing at the crime, they're tragic. But it's
Right.
the person that kills their wife, and all of a sudden 2 weeks later they've found a new romance. And I always knew, when, as a homicide detective, when you're looking at the people close to the victim, that when the husband or boyfriend has luckily found new romance within 3 weeks, or increased the life insurance policy, it's always a good starting point when you're tracking that case.
In law enforcement, we call those clues, right?
Yeah, that's the clues.
I got to tell you, here in the United States, we have more than our share of dumb criminals, but here in Florida, we lead the pack, I believe. There's even a book and a radio show here called Florida Man. It's all about stupid criminals. Today's is no different. So we've got a Florida man that was wanted by the cops. He tried to throw him off his trail by placing a big sign outside of his house. And this big sign read, "Johnny Yates does not live here." But it didn't work. Now, Johnny is 41 years old. He was wanted by the Polk County Sheriff's Office. And I know you don't know where Polk County is. That's over on the west coast of Florida on the Gulf. And the sheriff there is renowned. His name is Grady Judd. This guy, if you look him up online, there's a whole list of Grady Judd sayings. And you'll love every one he says, but it'll have you falling out of a chair laughing. So that's the county we're in. Yates was wanted by the Polk County Sheriff's Office on aggravated battery, false imprisonment, and tampering charges. He was eventually locked up. Deputies showed up at Yates' Lakeland home at about 2:45 p.m. after getting a tip that he was hiding out inside. When the deputies arrived, they noticed a note written on a dry erase board in the front window of this house that said, "Johnny Yates does not," and "not" is in capital letters, "live here." Wow. The cops are thinking, gee, a dry erase board has never lied to us before.
Oh, you may as well walk away.
Yep. So the deputies, they questioned somebody who's leaving the house, who confirmed, yeah, little Johnny's inside the house. He's in there hiding out. So they surrounded the house, and for about an hour, they're calling for the fugitive to come out, and the cops have to take it to the next level. And so this is a quote from Sheriff Grady Judd, and you're going to love it. "Enough was enough, and the surrender smoke was dispensed inside the house." Surrender smoke.
I picture the type of sheriff you're talking about, and yeah, classics, aren't they?
Oh, I love the guy. I'll do my best to get him on here on the show at some point. Little Johnny didn't come out before others came running out of the house, so they were detained. The deputies called out for a little time more, still no response from Johnny, so they provided a second helping of surrender smoke. Waited, still no response. That was kind of surprising, because you got four little rats scurrying out on that first go around. So finally, the deputies, they deploy a canine Dexter. He goes in the house, and guess who he finds in the house? Little Johnny's in there hiding. He was hiding inside of I don't know if you know what a chest of drawers is.
Yeah, yeah.
So he must not be that big, because he was hiding inside the chest of drawers. He
himself in one of the drawers.
So he's arrested and taken to jail. The sheriff's office said the four people who were initially holed up in the house with Yates were also dealt with. And this is from Sheriff Grady Judd. In regards to the four people who were not cooperating with the deputies, each one received a parting gift, a charge of resisting, and an all-expense-paid trip to Grady Judd's bed and breakfast. You gotta love this guy, right?
I love that, and I would love our law enforcement officers to be able to speak more like that. They'd get shot down in flames with that type of commentary. But yeah, that's classic, and you know exactly what's happened. It's beautiful. Love it.
There's a lot of places in our country that he would be shot down, but not in Florida. Let me tell you, his people love him here. I love him. I've never met the man, but I have the utmost respect, because he says it's all about protecting the citizens of Polk County, where he's the sheriff, and that's what he was elected to do, and he's going to do his job. But you need to Google him just to see some of the same.
I've made a note here. I'm going to have a look at this
You'll,
guy.
you'll appreciate it. So in our show, we always talk about how I met the guest here, and this is pretty cool. We're recording this on April, what is today, the 29th. And I was a guest on Gary's show. He has his own podcast in Australia called I Catch Killers. It's one of the leading, most listened to podcasts in Australia. So he had me on as a guest, and it just posted today. So as we were getting ready, there's a big time difference. I think you guys are, what, 14 hours ahead of us? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're recording. We're going into dinner time, and you guys just got up. So thanks for getting up early and coming out to do this. I felt
Pleasure.
guilty about that. But I was looking at your podcast and some of the notes that you'd sent me, and it turns out we have a few guests in common that have been on your show, I Catch Killers, as well as here on Game of Crimes. The first one is Mike Franzese, who used to be a member of the Colombo crime family in New York. He was here on episode 59 back in 2022. We had Joe Pistone, the undercover FBI agent that everybody knows as Donnie Brasco, was played by Johnny Depp in Donnie Brasco movie. That was episode 73 and 22. And then we also had Rick Prado, who formerly worked for the CIA down in Central America. What a story! He was that's one of the bravest people that I think.
Steve, not forgetting what you did in Colombia, but what Rick did, and the guests you mentioned there, all of them, I just found them fascinating, and Donnie Brasco, I was like a little kid excited about speaking to the real Donnie Brasco. You watch the movie, you see what goes on, and then Michael Franzese, I had him on a guest, and he came over to Australia and did a tour around the country, and I did the tour with him. I hosted the show, so I got to know Michael very well, and what a fascinating fella he was. He asked me to host his show, so we did the tour around the country, and it was something that, from a cop's point of view, I never thought I'd be touring with an ex-mafia capo around the country doing a live show. But interesting times.
It was. Mike is he is a true gentleman. I wouldn't want to dealt with him when he was in his criminal element, but he went to prison. He did his time. He paid his dues here in the United States, became a Christian. Still, he lives the Christian lifestyle. He's on social media every day promoting the Bible and so forth. And I just think the world of him. I was like you. I never thought I'd say that. And then Joe I met Joe at the Southern California Gang Conference, which I don't know if you can see this emblem, but that's what it stands for.
Right.
That's an organization in San Diego that I've supported for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years now. And I'm going out to their conference again at the end of May for a week. And Joe is an honorary member of the board out there. So I get to see him every year. And you know how we are as cops. We like to drink beer and we like to tell war stories. Well, I don't drink beer anymore, so it's a lot of war stories going on.
Yeah.
And everybody's got their stories, but as exciting as everybody thinks the Pablo Escobar story is, I could sit there and listen to Joe talk for hours and hours about the things that he was involved with and the things that he did. And I'm looking at this guy like, damn.
No, it's fascinating, isn't it? Fascinating. And the pressure he must have been under for an extended period of time. And we know what he was dealing with, and make one wrong move at any time, he could have had a bullet to the back of the head. And as Michael said, in the world and the mafia, it's usually the people closest to you are the ones that are going to pop you if you're going to be taken down. So you'd be living in this just heightened tension the whole time, just wondering what's going to happen. So the 3 people that you mentioned, they're very special people and extraordinary stories that they've had, and they live to tell the tale, which is amazing.
Joe was deep cover for 6 years.
Yeah, it's hard to comprehend, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. But so anyway, when I was on your show, just, cops, what I've learned, and you probably have too, is cops around the world are pretty much the same. We might talk a little different, and I got my little country accent going, and you got your Australian accent going. But we became friends off the show, and that's after only talking to each other for a couple hours.
Yeah.
So, and of course, we'd always do our due diligence, and I checked you out, man, and I thought, holy cow! After I started reading about everything you were involved with, I'm thinking that's the man that needs to come on Game of Crimes. So that's how we got together. And as we typically do, just very quickly, I want to ask you about your background. You had a very interesting way you got into law enforcement, but just where did you grow up? What were your family dynamics? Did you have other people in law enforcement? Did you, when
Yeah,
you were at school, did you play sports? Did you go to college? Which I know you did, but if you can just
yeah.
tell us a little bit about that, please.
Okay, well, I grew up in Sydney, one of the suburbs, a fairly typical childhood. My old man, who's passed away now, but he was tough. Yeah, I was the oldest son. I had two sisters and a brother. I was the one that, my older sister was, yeah, straighty 180. She didn't get into trouble. I was the first one getting into trouble. And so I think the old man thought, well, I've got to break him and rebuild him, or otherwise he's going down the wrong path. And I'm thankful to this day that he was as hard as he was, because otherwise, I don't know, I might have been sitting here, but my story might be completely different, having spent a long
Hmm.
time in prison. I never wanted to be a cop. It wasn't law enforcement in the family. I got into the building industry and worked on building sites as an electrician and got a trade. It didn't really rock my boat. It was something that I was more. I need a job. Okay, I can do this. So reasonably good at it. Got paid, and then went surfing on the weekends and just did what you did at that age. I got out of a building site on a stinking hot day in the Sydney summer, and I'd been in the ceiling, crawling around in insulwool and dust and all that. And I'm thinking there must be an easier way of making a living. And I kid you not, when I got out of there, I'm sitting down just having lunch, and I saw two cops chasing a bad guy down the road. And I thought, shit, that looks like fun. I wouldn't mind doing that. So I'd like to say, and I applied the next day. It took about 12 months to get in once you went through all the tests, but I applied the next day. So I can't sit here and say I joined the police to make a difference to society. I joined the police because it looked like a hell of a lot of fun and a little bit easier than crawling through ceilings. But once I got in the cops, that's fitted like a glove. From the first day in the academy, and it's not in this woke world now. The instructors used to beat you down. I still remember one of the first runs we went on in the academy that someone threw up, and we had to do push-ups, run, push-ups, run. The person that threw up, the instructor made the person do the push-ups over their own vomit. And I thought, this is great. This is real. And I really,
That's pretty cool.
I, I really enjoyed it. And then when you got your first pay, I couldn't believe you were getting paid for having so much fun. You're on the range, or you're doing office survival stuff and learning the law. And I just loved it from day one and enjoyed every day I had in the cops. So that's how I
It's
found my way.
it's infectious. It really is. It's an addiction, to be
Yeah,
quite honest about it. But when you were telling the story about, you saw the two cops chasing the bad guy and you thought you wanted to do that, I was
yeah.
wondering, did you want to be the cop or did you want to be the bad guy?
Well, it came down to the wire because the cops caught the bad guy, so I decided to join their team. Either way, I just wanted to, play chasings, which is basically what I did for the next 34 years, play chasings,
Yeah.
chasing killers.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Man, and let me tell you, what I've found out so far, you've had one hell of a career. When you were, do you guys have high school? Is that what you call it over there?
Yeah, we go through high school. You leave at about, I left when I was 17, and then that's your HSC, it's called over here. So that's probably the equivalent that you've got over there at 17. Then you have a choice
Hmm.
of going in the workforce or going to uni. I did uni a little bit later. I wish I did it at the start. It would have been easier than being on the building site, but I did a bachelor in policing. That was my the degree, specialising in criminal investigation. I'll tell you just a funny story here, Steve. That I was pretty busy as a detective. I was in organised crime, and we're looking for some crew that were doing professional busts on building sites and stealing white goods and all that. So we were doing a lot of stakeouts. I was trying to keep up with the uni, keep up with the pressure of the job that I was doing. And at one stage, we were doing a stakeout overnight. It was hiding in the dark, basically. I'm sitting in a cupboard, writing my assignment with a torch, sitting in a cupboard waiting for the bad guys to come in. Yeah, literally sitting in a kitchen cupboard with a torch so the light wasn't coming out. So when the bad guys, were going to break in, they didn't realise we're there, and writing an assignment. So little bizarre
Oh,
things like that, just, yeah, it makes you laugh.
that's dedication to the college as well as the job.
Yeah, I was committed.
Holy cow. Yeah, we probably all should be committed.
Yeah, multitask.
Oh, there you go. Now, and for our listeners, I just want to quickly, and this is just a Reader's Digest version, but tell you what Gary has been involved with in his career. So he joined the New South Wales Police in 1985. And how many sworn officers did you guys have?
We've got up to now about 15,000. I think it was a little bit less. It's a very big, even worldwide, it's a very big police force. It covers all of New South Wales. So there would have been about 12, 13,000 police at the time.
Wow. And I told Gary when we were talking, I came on in a 35-man department. He got 15,000 over there. But Gary is one of Australia's most celebrated detectives. He was a detective in the Major Crime Squad, which included their Armed Hold-Up Squad, the Organized Crime Squad, and their Gang Squad. He was also involved in tactical policing as part of the Tactical Response Group, State Protection Support Unit, and Close Personal Protection. And on top of everything else, he was a homicide detective for a long time in his career. I mean, is there any assignment over there you didn't do? Did you do anything in narcotics?
I did in the general detectives work and organised crime and even homicide had cross over into the narcotics field. But I sort of you had to stay in uniform for 2 years when you joined the police, and I sort of pulled towards tactical policing. I enjoyed that side of it, the state protection support unit, tactical response group, like your SWAT teams. That was great, but criminal investigation sort of I had a leaning towards that, and then when I got into that, went through the different squads, worked my way into homicide, and that's where I had my real passion. So, yeah, I had a wide range of experiences, but basically homicide is what I specialised in.
Oh, I'll say. I mean, you sent me some notes here, and I'm looking through that, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to try to get a 2-hour podcast out of there, but this is about 8 hours worth of material here.
Yeah.
And I won't do that to you, I promise. Let me ask you about your police academy. Where was that and how long did it last?
Okay, it's down in Goulburn, which is probably 2 hours south of Sydney. And it used to be in the centre of Sydney, but in the inner city, and then they moved it down to Goulburn. And I was one of the first classes, or in the first 12 months, that they opened up a specially built, it was used to be a teachers' college, I think, converted into an academy. You had to live on campus for 3 months, and you weren't allowed to leave. So it was fairly rigid there. You then went after 3 months, if you passed all the things you needed to pass, allocated to a local police station working in uniform. You then came back for another 6-week course, and at that point in time, if you passed that, you became a constable. The academy was great. When I joined in '85, there was at that point in time, there was some old school thinking in the way that you would have experienced it, the way the instructors go at you, and then it became it changed a little bit, but it was serious, and it was discipline. It was basically break you down. You had to do all the marching drills, which for the life of me couldn't understand at the time what it was all about. But yeah, it's about discipline, and yeah, was never the best marcher, but it was always the joy I had with the marching was the comments that people would be making with a straight face, whispering under their breath about the instructor or something like that, and we'd all get into trouble and have to do push-ups and that type of thing. But it was a lot of fun, and Steve, I didn't think the biggest stress I would have in the police academy, it wasn't shooting, it wasn't officer survival, it wasn't the law, it was passing the typing test. And the typing test, I think we had to touch type 35 words a minute or something. It might have been 60 words a minute. I forget what it was. Didn't come naturally to me, and so I would be practicing my typing. Actually, during that 12 months before I had to come back, I took a manual typewriter away, practicing while I was away camping just to get my typing speed up. But that became the biggest stressor
Wow.
I had in the police academy. But it was a lot of fun, and in any environment like that, you bring a group of people together. And only 3 days ago, we had a reunion from the class I went through the academy with. 40-year reunion, and it was great. It's like people you've gone through school with, and it's still the old
Oh, yeah.
faces, and still the same sense of humour, and it was a real bonding experience. So I enjoyed that experience.
Yeah, that's fantastic. When my first police academy was through the West Virginia State Police Academy back in 1976, and they wanted you to learn how to type. Well, I had learned how to type in high school, so they teach everybody as if this is a typewriter, like you don't even know what it is, and they don't want you hunting and pecking. They want to teach you to use all fingers, and so you would have class all day long. You'd have dinner, and it was a live-in academy also,
Yeah.
except we got to go home on weekends. And so they, after I think it was the first 2 weeks after dinner, you had to go in for a 2 or 3 hour class 4 nights a week for 2 or 3 weeks to learn how to type. And after you've been in there a few nights, the teacher would turn around. She'd say, "Here's your typing assignment," and she'd put something up on the board, or you'd have something on a piece of paper next to you to type. And when she turned her back, boy, you just burn those keys up. And then she turned around to see who's like, "Who's doing that?" And I'm back there going, just playing stupid, but just being juvenile, messing with the teacher.
Yeah, if there was a way you could get through that typing test, and yeah, the touch typing skills, you did not realise how important that would be in your policing career, because you're forever typing reports and all that, and yeah, you can see why they pushed it so hard. But there are other aspects of it, and I really enjoyed that experience, and I just, as I said at the start, it felt like it was the right fit for me. I liked working with people, and policing is a people's career. You've got to be able to communicate, and you get the excitement. So, yeah, tick the boxes.
Excellent. When you came out of the academy, did you have any choice whatsoever in where you would be stationed, or like a wish list, or they just send you where they want to?
They try to send you where you want, but it's, yeah, there's favourite spots, and I know my mates down the academy because I was into surfing back in those days, and they posted on the board. They changed the posting round and put me out at Wilcannia, which is the furthest west away from the beach that you possibly could, just to give me the shits. And I had about a day panicking, going, "What do you mean there?" But I ended up getting stationed in Hornsby Police Station in Sydney. Not an overly busy station, but it had a good cross-section. It had a rural area, it had a transport hub, it had a bit of industry, and so it was a good learning place for me to learn my skills, which I really appreciated. And once I got there, I looked around at the people I wanted to work with, and I didn't want to go home at the end of the day. You know the excitement when you first become a cop. It's just so exciting, and you just want to be there every day. And you're worried when you're off, you're going to miss something exciting.
Oh yeah. And I have to say, at the end of 38 years, I still had that desire in your heart that you wanted to go out there and get the job done.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
So your first assignment, are you in uniform?
Yeah, general duty. So that does a whole range of things. You do domestics, car accidents, that type of thing. It was where Hornsby was at the start of a freeway where you're leading out to Sydney. There was a lot of bad motor vehicle accidents that you did Hornsby, where high speed crashes, which were not very nice to do. Domestic type of crimes. And I think what got me interested in being a detective, besides, and I know from speaking to you, Miami Vice had an impact on you guys, the TV show Miami Vice. I think probably cops worldwide. Everyone thought that looks cool. I remember I was in uniform and there'd been a murder, and my role was simply to set up the police tape around the crime scene. And I hadn't been in the cops very, very long, and I'm standing out guarding the crime scene, and up rolled the detectives, and they swanned in, and they looked like cool dudes. Went straight under the tape and walked in, and then walked out of the crime scene with a knowing look on their face, and I thought, I want a piece of that. I want to get into that, and that sort of steered me towards. You couldn't apply to be a detective. It was more a tap on the shoulder, so it was about just knuckle down, do your work, and then someone will notice that, hey, you might be the person we're looking for, and then you get a tap on the shoulder. They let you come in there or on loan, so you're not officially there. See if you fit the type of work, and that's how I got into plain clothes.
You had an incident with a bomb, didn't you?
Yeah, that was. I had a lot of incidents, but that was a pretty funny one. Well, funny in that I'll tell you the story. It was on a major.
Were you in uniform at the time or detective?
No, I was a detective at that time, and I was leading an investigation. It was it was the biggest murder investigation in the country. I think at its peak we were looking at about 8 different murders, and we had an informant involved in that job. And this informant, without revealing details, but ex-bikie, been inside prison for murder, difficult one to deal with. And he came under our attention and became an informant on this job. As you know, a criminal informant, when you're talking organised crime and bikies and murders and that, is pretty precarious position to be in. And we ran with him for years. And he was always at risk, and we had to keep him, keep him tucked away and out of trouble and that type of thing, managing the informant. He would hand back different weapons, and he thought we were trying to kill him. He was paranoid. He knew the bikies and the other people were trying to kill him, but he also suspected the cops were trying to kill him. So the relationship I had with him was fairly intense. As he got to trust me further and further, we got to the point where we had him put up in a house, and he said, look, I think I can trust you now, and I've come in to this house, and it's a covert operation at this stage, so we can't declare it. Gone in there in the casual gear and gone in and seen him, and he hands me this bomb. And when I talk a bomb, we're talking, and this bloke had the expertise to build this type of stuff, and he was a bit of a firearms nut. He's given me this bomb, and it's a pipe bomb with the wires coming out, and just put it in my hand. And I'm standing in this house with this bomb in my hand, and I've gone, I'm not sure if I can swear, but this is what I said. You can.
You can.
What the fuck? And so I'm standing there with the bomb. He's going, don't worry, I've disconnected it. And I've gone, well, he said, well, I don't need it anymore. I trust you guys. I just had it here if I was going to be raided or whatever, the blow went to someone up if they were coming in. So I've got this bomb, and I'm working with my colleague, young detective, Luke. I said, Luke, you know what we should do in this situation I'm standing here with the bomb? Because I didn't want to tip it or do anything. I'm just standing still with the bomb. We should probably call the bomb squad, but we've got a covert operation here. So how about we just take the bomb, put it in the car, we'll drive to a quiet place, so there's an oval nearby, and we'll do what we're meant to have done. So Luke and I are walking out of the place. It's near a big shopping centre. If we called the bomb squad, they would have closed down half of Sydney, and we were trying to do it covertly. We've walked to the car, and Luke's got the keys to the car, and he's pressed the... you know how bombs always seem to go off when someone presses the key to the car? So I'm carrying the bomb, and when Luke pressed to open the car, I've turned my head. I have no idea why that was going to help me. Just one side of my face wouldn't be blown off. Anyway, we've put the bomb in the boot of the car. We've driven off with the sort of fingers stuck in our ears, and we've driven to the middle of an oval. And we thought, okay, now it's safe to call the bomb squad. And I've called the bomb squad. And I've explained, it's Inspector Jubelin here, blah, blah, blah. And they've gone, you've what? And I've said, I've got a bomb, but it's all right. It's in the boot of the car, and we've parked. I thought they'd congratulate. We've parked the car in the middle of an oval, so everyone's safe. And they've just unleashed on me and abused me for about 10 minutes, of which... every single thing they said was 100% right. I was a total dickhead for doing what I did. But after about 10 minutes, I said, look, I agree with you. I am wrong. I'm stupid. But please, could you come and get the bomb? And the bomb squad turned up and took it away, detonated it, and we all lived happily ever after. But yeah, that was an experience.
I'll bet they still talk about that one.
I know I was an idiot, but in the end, I got tired of being abused and accepting that I'm an idiot. And I said, well, I'm still here. We've got rid of the bomb. And sometimes you got to do things like that. Like I've made light of the situation, but it was genuinely a covert operation, and I couldn't afford to have the whole area cordoned off, and it would have just blown up in a different way, not the bomb. Right. Yeah, and I'm here to tell the story.
Yeah, you deal with the situation the way that you think it is. Well, you don't have that experience. You don't know what to do, but it's... that was a good story. You know what? Cops are the same everywhere around the world, I think.
Yeah, we've all done stupid things like that. Live to tell the tale, some of us.
Yeah, thank the good man upstairs. We're still here to talk about it and laugh about
exactly.
It. And a lot of people hear us talking about these kind of stories and think we're idiots. But laughter is a defense mechanism. That's just how you deal with it. If you dwell on things like that, how close you came to death, you're probably going to lose your edge, and you may quit, or you may get yourself hurt or somebody else hurt.
Yeah, I agree with you, Stephen. I noticed that you talked at the start of your podcast and said we're going to make light of situations, but understand it. I spent 25 years in homicide, and people would say, well, how did you manage that? And it was trying to find some joy, little moments like that, as ridiculous as it sounds. You got to be able to laugh, and it's not disrespectful to the crime or the circumstances you're in. Even the victims, I have victims on the podcast here, and horrendous situations where their families might have been murdered. And I can sit here in this studio and laugh with them, and we talk about that, and that's a coping mechanism, and I think that's what police have got worldwide. Where I sat down and first spoke to you, we get the humour, and they call
Right.
it. People think it's a little bit off centre, but it's the way that you survive.
It is off center, and it's not normal. It's
Yeah,
not commonplace against people that are not in like this line of work, or being a first responder, or being in the military, or really being like an electrical lineman, where you
yep,
could be electrocuted, or you could fall off a telephone pole, or I mean, high risk jobs, I guess is what I'm trying
yeah,
to get to here. It seems like those guys, well, us, have the best
yeah.
sense of humor.
Yeah, well, it's
So
a good way, a coping mechanism, isn't it? If you look at
it
all the
really
doom
is.
and gloom, you just get weighed down.
Yep, yep. So, did you do the tactical side of things before you became a homicide dick or detective?
Yeah, yeah. I when I was in uniform, you could do the tactical response group, which was right training. That was the shields and batons, and we would do some arrests, armed offenders, and that type of stuff. And they allowed you to do it. When I say part time, you're on call for it. You're qualified. You've got to be certified and keep your shooting skills up and everything else. And that was great. That got me into the tactical side of policing. And I talked about the police academy. This was ramped up to another level. I think it was a 6-week course at the time. I ended up in hospital. I think most of the people ended up in hospital at some degree. Finished the course, but injuries sustained, and it was rough and ready. And I don't know how they do it these days. I don't know if they'd be allowed to do it, but it was a lot of hardcore baton training, getting gas, getting just, I won't say brutalised because it was a bit of fun too, but
Yeah.
it was hard, and I enjoyed that aspect of it. When you finished it, you felt like you'd really achieved something. So that was right squad training, the tactical response group. Then when I got into detectives, we couldn't be in the tactical response group, but we could go to the which is more in line with the SWAT teams, the high risk offenders, arresting armed and dangerous offenders, sieges, and that. You could do
Hmm.
that part time, and again, you had to do a completely different course because you're using different weapons, and it's not about riot control. It's about being able to use weapons properly to arrest armed offenders. I enjoyed that. And one period of time I was in homicide, and I was also a member of the State Protection Support Unit, and getting called out all the time for either a homicide or the tactical side of policing. When the phone rang, I couldn't grab the phone quick enough, hoping that it would be the tactical side, not the homicide call, because if I've called out for
Yeah.
homicide, I know I'm up for the next 48 hours. I could be anywhere in the state. My life will probably be turned upside down for the next couple of months. When I got called for the tactical, we've got a high risk offender we've got to arrest this morning. You might get the call at 2 a.m. You get kitted up in your overalls and you get your weapons. You go out there, a siege situation. You get the fun of arresting the offender, getting the adrenaline going, having the fun. I shouldn't say fun, but it is. You know what I'm talking about.
It's the
And
excitement.
the excitement, and then you walk away and there's no paperwork. Like they were call outs that I was loving. So I had a great period of time in my career when I was just getting the excitement and the intellect of a homicide investigation and the adrenaline of the tactical policing. The other thing I did with tactical policing, come the Sydney Olympics 2000, I
Hmm.
had a choice of either being in the state protection side of things with tactical policing or close personal protection. And I put my little thinking cap on and thought, I like watching sport. If I'm looking after a president or a head of state, they're going to be watching the sport. I'm going to do dignitary protection. So that was probably the best 2-3 weeks of my policing career. I had so much fun. Front row seats at the Olympics, opening ceremony, closing ceremony, got to see and do everything you'd want to do. We had the pass that would get you anywhere in the
Hmm.
village, and I was looking after the Bulgarian president for a while. I was looking after the head of state from Turkey and different things there, and got to watch sport from the front row seat and absolutely loved it. Concentrating on making sure the person I was looking after was safe, of course. But
Absolutely. Not missing that soccer goal shot.
yeah, exactly.
See, that's what we call forward thinking. You're
Yeah,
thinking about the situation. Okay, I'm going to do the job, but how can this benefit me just a little bit?
Well,
I like it.
I was speaking to the tactical guys that were doing it too, and we all had a lot of fun during the Olympics. But they were sitting in rooms or sitting in vans, ready to respond if an incident occurred. And I was sitting in the front row of watching gold medals being won. It was fantastic. So that was a good time. That also led me, and it was an interesting period in the training for that to qualify for that. I looked after our own heads of state, and I spent a couple of weeks looking after our Prime Minister. It was John Howard at the time, and as a close personal protection, and going with him for his walks in the morning, and just seeing how busy it was. And that's another experience you don't expect when you join the cops. You're literally
Hmm.
hanging out with the Prime Minister for a couple of weeks from the time he wakes up to the time he goes to bed. And yeah, it was an interesting experience.
Was he a personable guy, or was he, you're here to serve me?
No, I found him very personable, and you have a perception of my perception of him before I met him was quite different, and I had a lot of respect, and I'm not political in any way, but I had a respect for the person that he was. He would greet me in the morning, Gary. It wasn't sort of arrogance or disrespectful, and it gave me confidence that I mightn't agree with all the things he did as a prime minister, but there was a decent person in charge of the country. And I got to say, they do work hard. Like the decisions they're making, because you're sitting in the car, you're listening to what's going on and what's being discussed,
Hmm.
and they're making big decisions on the run the whole time. The people that had attitude, I found during the Sydney Olympics, looking after different heads of state, invariably the heads of state were the good people. But some of the people round them were the ones that were, they treat you like a piece of shit, and get out of my way. It was the heads of state that were fine. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was interesting seeing that side of the world.
it is. It's amazing how people get a little bit of a position or a title, and all of a sudden, oh, they're in charge.
Yeah,
They know more than anybody else. It's a shame that it happens in law enforcement.
yeah,
It's amazing to see people who really played a support role, but you go into retirement and they were DEA. They were Mr. DEA or Mrs. DEA, and when you worked with them, you know the truth. But
Steve, we could talk. We could extend it for hours. I know exactly what you're talking about. I think that's when I first sat down and spoke to you and other guests I've had on the podcast, and I'm sure you've had it the same way. You can sense in the first 5 minutes whether you're talking to someone that's a real deal, that someone that's done the work.
yeah,
So
yeah. There's here in not to be cliche, but there's a saying here in the United States, a country saying, and I'm country boy. If you have to toot your own horn, it's probably not worth tooting.
yeah. It's a good phrase, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's true. It's people think just because of that Escobar thing that you came back and that people were differential to you. Most
Yeah,
people didn't know who I was or what I was involved with. If they did and asked me about the case, I told them.
yeah.
But it wasn't like you went into a new office and said, "Hey guys, I killed Pablo Escobar yesterday. What'd you do?"
Yeah. I think there's a real danger if you spend time in your career and you get a little bit cocky or arrogant and think, yeah, well, I've done this and done that. I always check myself that you're as good as your last investigation, and each investigation I was involved in, whether I was leading it or working on it or whatever, I was trying to prove myself again. I think when you lose that sharpness, where you're
Mhm.
sort of resting on your laurels, that can be dangerous, and you start to slip. Your skills start to decline.
You do, but at the same token, like when I came back from, so I was a cop for 12 years before DEA, and then Escobar was killed in 93, and I joined DEA in 87, so 6 years into that. So I've got 18 years on the job. And when I came back to the United States, I was stationed in North Carolina, and I'll be honest with you, that's where the job all of a sudden became so much fun. It's
Yeah,
like there's no pressure to prove yourself to anybody else anymore.
yeah,
And you don't slow down. I mean, one of my biggest problems when I was on the job is I couldn't say no to people. They're another law enforcement personnel, and it just kept you hopping all the time. But I loved it. I loved it. It's no regrets whatsoever.
no, it's. I look back at my career and enjoy every moment of it, and yeah, keeping that edge, keeping that keenness is important in law enforcement. I think once you start to take it, I always thought that I would leave homicide if I didn't have the you had to be passionate about it with homicide,
Hmm.
and people have said to me, and it's almost like it's a backhanded comment where they go, "Oh, he's very passionate," but I think you got to be passionate with perspective when you're investigating, serious crime. It's not a 9 to 5 job. You got to live and breathe it, and make it personal. And
Absolutely.
someone's life's been taken, and I would often say to people, like I worked at all different levels in homicide, but the advice I would give to people coming into homicide, you got to be prepared to bleed for the job. Now that sounds dramatic, but I mean you've got to make these sacrifices if you want to be a homicide
Hmm.
detective.
And your family sacrifices as well.
Most definitely. When my career finished, had and the way it finished, I had time to stop and reflect and all that. And I had to, I say this half jokingly, but half truthfully as well, had to go back and apologise to all the people that were close to me. They allowed me to throw myself into the job as much as
Mhm.
I did, and I did throw myself into the job. And I'd go back and stepping away from it, I go, right, I do owe you an apology. I wasn't always there, and what those people did for me, I'd get caught up in a job or whatever, basically disappear, come back almost broken. They'd put me back together again. Once I felt good, I'd throw myself into a job again, and away I go. But you need
Yeah.
you need that support. I think that's important. I know through your career you had your support with your wife throughout, and that would have made a big difference having someone there in your corner to help you get
It really
through it.
does. It's somebody that not only brings you back, but they keep you grounded. You know, you
Yeah,
sometimes you solve a big case and your ego might start to expand a little bit and your head won't fit
yeah,
through the door anymore. She is
yeah.
very good about, hey, movie star, could you take the trash out and listen, you got to cut the grass today, okay?
Yeah, yeah. But that's I think that's good. And I kept a lot of friends, old friends, that they would just pay out on me about my policing career. Like I'd catch up with them. I might have had a high profile job or whatever, and they're going, "Oh, it took you 10 years to catch that person." And that type of stuff. Keep you grounded. And I think that helped me in my career in that I love the policing, but I didn't socialise with police as much. I had my own circle of friends away from policing, and I think that helped me to a degree in the career, and that not get caught up in your own importance as a police officer.
Yeah. Yeah, when it's interesting you say that because when I was a local cop, I grew up in that area and I went to high school and
Yeah,
college in that area and had our own friends outside of the law enforcement. But like with DEA, you transfer around so much. Your friends
yeah,
are the guys you work with,
yeah,
and their wives become friends with your wives or their husbands if it's a female agent. That's the family that you're closest with. So it
yeah,
was starkly different then. And even now, like we moved to Orlando here 3.5 years ago and we're friends with our little neighbors here right across the street and on each side of us. But my other friends here are people that I know at the gym, and most of them are cops.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's just strange, you don't it's hard to get away from and
yeah.
I don't know.
Look,
I don't know.
I see the relationship, and it came across talking to you and how it's portrayed the relationship you had with Javier. I've had relationships like that through my career. I've worked with people for a long time, and you become close, and some of them know more about you than anyone else. They know your
Hmm.
weaknesses, your strengths, and all that. And I had friendships like that throughout the police, and that helped me survive. And I had some great partnerships and times in the cops where it was fun. Every time we'd turn up, we'd just be giving it to each other, and like the odd couple. But you'd be travelling all around the state or overseas, whatever. You're working with the bloke. People think when we go away, we live in luxury. We can't afford a separate motel room, so you're sleeping with your bloke
Yeah.
that you've been working with, a bed that's 3 feet from your face. We used to go into motel rooms. It was Jason Evers. He was my partner for 10 years in homicide, and we'd travel around and we'd book into a hotel. We could only afford one room, and there'd be two single beds. We'd try and get the wardrobe to if we could move the wardrobe, we'd put the wardrobe between the beds or move it around. We just got sick of looking at each other.
I'll
Yeah.
bet. I'll bet. Not to mention the bodily functions that happen when you're asleep, the
Uh,
snoring, and maybe the
he's
other
it,
end as well.
Big of a human being, Jason. No, we had a lot of fun. We had quite a few fights. We'd been away on a job with another informant, and it was an undercover operation on a serial killer. And we'd been travelling around the state, a lot of pressure, a lot of moving parts and all that, and not much sleep. And we're travelling back from the north coast, and it was about a 6-hour flight. We fought, and we had an argument, and we didn't talk to each other for the full 6 hours. But it got to the point.
Wow.
This is how stubborn I was. I'm driving, I'm falling asleep because we were changing the driving. But I was too proud to tell him I was too tired. And you know those road signs when they're doing road work, there was a stop sign. And we had to stop on the highway. And I've stopped and I've fallen asleep on the steering wheel. And Jason said, "Do you want me to drive?" I said, "Yes." And so we swapped, and then we didn't talk for the rest of the trip. But I made the point to him, I was prepared to die rather than talk to you first. So sounds childish when you relay it, but yeah.
Yeah, my wife said, I tell my wife Connie that, in man school, they tell us we don't have to grow up, and we don't. We're juvenile. I'm an old man now, and I'm still a juvenile.
Yeah. It's I still Jason's out of the police, but we still speak regularly. And if I don't answer the call, it's usually a minute abuse left on the phone, calling me every name under the sun. And but good those type of relationships, because we had a lot of pressure jobs, and that sustained me through it. Like you could share the pressure with what was going on.
Right, you understood each other, and it was. I refer to our families as the unsung heroes. I mean, we especially as a high profile homicide investigator, I'm sure you're in the papers all the time and on the news TV, and you're getting all this attention. And our families are back. The wives are expected to, or it could be the husband, are expected to take care of business at home and take care of the children and all the things that we miss, the birthday parties and the soccer games and the special events and things like that. And then they continue to support us. And you just think, how blessed am I that I've got somebody like that in my life?
Yeah, you do need that support. You do need that support. Otherwise, it's very, very hard to do it on your own without being able to come back and know that you've got something to come back to. You can see how people lose their way if they haven't got that anchor for them.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to also to you were talking about how involved it is in law enforcement. When I tell people, and just simply because of the TV series or the podcast, I get a lot of emails from young people saying, "Oh, I read your book. I saw you on TV. You inspired me. I want to go into law enforcement. What advice do you have?" My advice to them is make sure that you're committed. If you're not committed, don't even go into this, because it's not a 9 to 5. It's not Monday through Friday. This actually becomes a lifestyle choice. This will become your lifestyle, which will affect every other part of your life. And if you're married and have children, they all suffer because of it.
Yeah, I think that's sound advice. It's not dissimilar to the type of thing I say. If people ask me to join the police, I say I loved it. I would recommend it, but understand it's going to change you and there will be sacrifices. And I think that's sort of channeling what you're saying there. It's going to have an impact on you. You're going to be a different person if you get through the career than you would have been if you didn't join the police, for sure.
Absolutely. So we've been going a little while now. What I want to do is call end to today's episode. For all you listeners out here, you got to come back tomorrow for this one. And I say this every week also. We're going to get into some really in-depth stories about Gary's career here, some of the homicides he worked on, some of the kidnappings, the horrific cases that he was involved with. Seriously, we have enough material here that this could probably be a 6-hour show, but we're not going to do that. But you don't want to miss these. And especially we want to talk about how his career ended, because I think it probably ended in a way that nobody expected. But it's amazing what he's done in his life after law enforcement. So, Gary, if you will, we'll bring you back tomorrow, buddy. And for all our listeners here, thank you so much. In the meantime, be safe. We'll see you tomorrow.